Hey y'all, it's me, Lynn Daniel, coming to you today. It is Saturday, October 21st, 2017. And I'm coming to you today on the Buddy Zone. This is my teacher channel here on YouTube. Guys, this channel is 11 years old. This is my oldest channel. But here on this channel, my friends come for inspiration about teaching, life, work balance, and that type of thing. And so I'm going to ask you to thumbs up this video if you like it. Be sure to hit the notification button, that bell icon. Click it so you can know when I upload new videos, and subscribe if you haven't. Thank you if you have. So, I often get the question, and I'm wearing a headphone today, guys, because I'm just testing out some equipment for the sound quality of my videos. Okay, I know I sound like a broken record, but I really don't have time to work on editing videos and trying to make the quality better by using my phone. So I am using my desktop, but I want you all to be able to hear me. And plus, I speak slowly, so listen to me at 1.5 for the fun, right? All right, so anyway, I get asked often, why do you teach middle school? Now, it may not come out like that, but people may say, you teach middle school, hey? Oh boy, that's tough. That's a tough age group. They can be quite sassy, can't they? And so I get that all the time. I have gotten that all the time for 32 years. So recently, I have been doing some self-work that I'm not really going to talk about, but I do encourage everyone to do some self-work when you kind of examine your psychological well-being and how you handle and care for yourself in this world and in your interactions with other people. And I'm trying to get better, and in the course of me doing this self-work, it has allowed me to see myself, my strengths and my weaknesses, and develop a plan of how to use my strengths to help me address my weaknesses. And so in teaching, what that looks like is, first off, I think I went into middle school because I was encouraged to go into middle school. First off, when I was doing my undergraduate studies, and my focus was primarily on English, and then I was encouraged to do middle school. And now I don't know why I was encouraged to do middle school. I don't recall doing an assessment of any sort that gave the school counselor an idea that I would work in middle school. Maybe, back in those days, they really didn't use a lot of psychometrics and different tests and assessments and all. They used their experience and their knowledge to make judgments. And so I think someone just, after observing me or maybe talking to me, made a judgment and said that I would be a good fit for middle school. So, I thought middle school was the craze, or it was the new way of formulating schools back then, moving from junior high to middle. So I was willing to focus my studies on that. And I think it was a good fit. I really think it was a good fit. Now, middle school is difficult. Middle school for me has been emotionally draining more so than content draining, or, draining my resources on how to teach them my methodologies. I don't feel a drain on that. I don't feel a drain on content. I feel a drain on like that culturally responsiveness for them. And it's only because I think, well, not only, but it's probably mainly because over the 32 years I've been teaching middle schoolers, society has changed so much. So initially, I remember as a teacher, students, you would deal with minor types of misbehaviors like speaking out in class or mild defiance or not bringing in homework or not completing assignments, minor types of behavioral problems. And then if a student, you could pull a student aside or have a student come in at an appointed time for a one-on-one session during the school day, and you could talk to them, you could like have a conference, you could tutor them and pretty much um, correct the problem. But as the years have progressed and societal issues seem to be getting very huge and enormous um, problems that young people are facing, then I began seeing more of that in my students, where violence was escalating, anger issues were escalating, aggressiveness was escalating, disrespect escalating, and all kinds of emotional turmoils that students were enduring at home and in their lives, in their real world, that they had to deal with every day. And so, of course, they bring it with them to school. And so if you have students whose basic needs aren't being met, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have students' basic needs as food, shelter, safety, those things aren't being met. You can't scale that hierarchical ranking, to get to their intellectual needs, because you've got to make sure that they feel safe. You've got to make sure that they are fed. You've got to make sure that they're warm, or that they are clothed appropriately, and that they feel welcomed and accepted and that type of thing. So, I look at all of that and I say, there's a reason why even though it's tough, it's a reason why I prefer to teach middle school more so than my experience of doing it. And I think it has to do with my own personal emotional stuff that I endured at that age, and beginning to understand my own struggles that I went through when I was that age. So I mean, I became fully aware, I think, or even more aware in my 20s when I started teaching, that when you were going through middle school, you had these issues going on, relating with your parents, relating with your mom. You had these things going on. Now you can examine those things. You can take an educated look at yourself. But that onion, that onion, man, you just keep peeling away. So here I am, 109 years old, and I see that I'm facing like the last frontier of my emotional gatekeeper, and I see where my life experiences very young have caused me to respond to certain things, certain behaviors in certain ways, and I see that in my students. Like, I see like how some of them get very quiet under certain circumstances. Some of them get very nervous. Some of them will laugh under certain circumstances. Some of them get angry and aggressive under certain circumstances. Some are carry themselves with an angry disposition. Some are very aloof. You have some who are depressed, and physically examine, when you look at them, you see the signs of the depression right there. And so I think I teach middle school because it helps me to be real and honest with myself about my humanity and about me, my deep down core values, my deep down core way of thinking about myself. And I think it helps me to be a better teacher, even though it's difficult. And the reason it is emotionally difficult is because I care. I care about my students. I really want my students to come through this adolescence phase, this middle school phase, stronger, like even with their junk and even with their problems, to at least come through it having a better understanding of your strengths and your attributes that make you a good person, that make you a worthy person. And then I feel that if students in this age group can understand their strengths and their abilities, what they do well, what their interests are, what they like, if they can get a handle on the emotional side of their development, being able to understand their triggers, what makes them feel sad or happy, and all the emotional stuff that they deal with a lot of their day can be very dramatic, from little things like how someone talks to them, the tone of voice, whether it's too loud or too softly, or whether they feel ignored. They are very good. Middle schoolers are very cued in on picking up affective behaviors. They pick them up. They are very keen at identifying how people are interacting with them. So because they are sensitive and because they are, they're just going through that hormonal turmoil that they are trying to learn to deal with. And so I recognize this, and I know this as an educator, and in my experience, I know this, in my training and in my schooling and education background, I know this, but in my personal interactions, I see it and I care. And the reason I care is because I see my own emotional stuff, and I see how I came through all of my, my background, all of my education, all of my experiences, all of my interactions, and how they have molded me into the type of person that I am today, with my strengths and my weaknesses. And so middle school, I think, now that I'm teaching, I teach the higher grade, 7 and 8, in an elementary setting. It is totally different from a real middle school setting. Even though we follow middle school frameworks, it is a different psyche and feeling and undertone to a middle school where it's simply 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, or however your school is constructed. Some are just 7th and 8th, some are just single grade levels, but I taught in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade middle school for a zillion dog years. And being in that isolated construct, students, they come in 6th grade very, not all of them are very innocent, but they come in with that innocence and that youth, that childlikeness. And then as the year goes and they're progressing and they're interacting with their peers and they're interacting with themselves, they're learning their own learning habits. They're learning how to deal with pressures from their peers, bullying. They're learning how to be responsible with all of their academic coursework, and they're learning to be responsible with the locker and all the different levels of responsibilities that they're dealing with. by the time they finish 6th grade and they get to 7th, they still have that silliness about them and a youthfulness about them, but they have definitely matured into another level of awareness. You know, many of them are going through the physical changes of the teenage years. And if they haven't already gone through them and they are going through them, you see them change because they now have a new level of responsibility of self-care, and it makes them more mature-like. And it also awakens them. It makes them more aware of like the aspects of life that they weren't even concerned about when they were younger, or maybe it was not even, they were not even aware of these things in life, other things pertaining to their physical maturity and development that is going on. So yeah, middle school helps me. It helps me to be a real person. Now, I think teachers like this, you know, I talk about reflection. I talk about the practice of teachers reflecting on their management, their construct of their class, their interactions with their colleagues, their professional development, their emotional well-being, all of that. You know, we reflect on all of the parts of ourselves, you know, in the role as an educator. And so in me reflecting on why I teach middle school, it has really just kind of knocked my socks off on seeing some weaknesses that I have, some strengths. I mean, you know, I was like, oh, I got that. I know who really taught me that, or who was my role model for that. But then the weaknesses, you know, I don't pin them on anyone else. I can pin them on experiences that I've endured, or that I've experienced, things that I've had to deal with young, you know, and I see how those experiences have made me strong in some way, but vulnerable in other ways. And this world we live in, being vulnerable is a scary. Being vulnerable is for a safe place. Let's just put it that way. Being vulnerable is only for when you are in a safe environment where being vulnerable, you will be cared for and protected. You can't go around being vulnerable, you know. So anyway, this is a long video. I hope it makes sense. This is a reflection video encouraging my colleagues to, you know, continue the practice of reflection and look at why you teach the grade and the age group that you teach. Like, what significant milestone occurred in your life that triggered you to want to fit in, or at least to reach out to that group. And another thing about middle school that I noticed last week, I was talking to someone about middle school, and then I said to her, I said, yeah, I got the job that no one wants. And I had never said that before. I had never looked at middle school as the job that no one wants. But really, when I talk to educators, a lot of educators do not want to deal with adolescents. And you know what? I can respect them for saying that, because it would be better to not have someone in a middle school classroom when they cannot handle that middle school student, that middle school audience. That middle school audience needs someone who understands what they are going through, and someone who can at least impart the knowledge to them in a way that is respectful yet relevant, and that is effective. And I think back on my middle school when my family moved from the hood to a nice area that was in transition. It was when we moved there, it wasn't all the way nice. It was being repatriated from I made up a word. I mean, that's a word, but I used it in my own way. But anyway, my family moved from the hood to an area that was going through a rebirth, renaissance. Beautiful area. I mean, just absolute beautiful mansions and just beautiful area, really. And it's today is beautiful. So anyway, I left an elementary school and I was in 8th grade and I went to a middle school. And I mean, it was just an experience. It was run like a high school, first off. It didn't feel safe. I liked the homeroom because in the morning, the homeroom, we would meet. The teacher would take attendance and talk to us a little bit. I remember her. I can't remember her name, but she was a real nice lady, very fashionable, and she looked about to be the age that I am now. And she was just a nice lady. She gave the impression, or I felt that she cared enough about us because she had said something to me about my parents. And I don't think she knew my parents, but you know how teachers, they have information about students. And she said something like, your parents worked very hard for you to come to school and do a good job. And so, she said something about your parents have good jobs and all of this. And so she was, I think, trying to direct me away from my choice of friends because I was picking to be around the people who were fun. And to me, the people who were fun were the people who were loud. You knew they were around. They had a real good sense of their social selves, but they were not very strong in their academics. And so I noticed the teachers were trying to steer me towards a group of peers that I felt were not very welcoming. And so, but I understood, at the time, I understood what the teachers were doing. And at this age, I can appreciate what the teachers were doing. I didn't appreciate what they were doing then. I understood what they were doing, but I resisted what they were doing. I wanted to pick my own friends. And so I did. And I had the self-discovery for myself in this big middle school. We traveled by homeroom, so we stayed together all day long and every day, And so I like that because I got to know my peers well enough, I think. And I had to come to the realization that I was picking people who I really didn't fit in with. And this is what middle school students have to understand and identify for themselves. Like, you want to pick people who you feel your parents will be proud of for you to associate with, who you at least have some commonalities with. But I discovered that I was just simply picking people because they made me feel happy, because they were talkative, they were engaging, they made you laugh. They were the class clown. And it made me feel good, like accepted or welcome maybe. But the teachers were seeing beyond that. And so when I share with my students now about picking your peers, that, you might want to pick the people who are fun, but then you really do need to see, what do you all have in common? Because those are going to be the longer lasting friendships, I think. If you pick someone that you have something in common with, whether it's academics, whether it's family life, church, hobbies, your own personal struggle. Maybe you all connect over like a skill that you have or a group that you belong to. And so, yeah, I remember that from middle school, and I appreciate now what my teachers were doing. And so, I mean, we try to do that. We talk to our students a lot about peer selection, but overall, they are going to have to see it for themselves. Good teachers are going to, like my teachers did, they try to guide me, they try to steer me through encouragement, they try to recommend people to be friends with. Um, but the students eventually, are going to have to make the choice themselves and see why, they may not understand it, why now in eighth grade. But when they get up in high school, when they get about 10th grade, their eyes are going to open and they're going to say, oh, I get it. I mean, when I was in 10th grade, that's when my eyes began to open. And I was starting to make some choices because a teacher recommended me for the high school I attended. And then a couple of teachers, I think, were saying, yeah, she would be a good fit there. And then some other teachers were saying, no, this is her struggle or this is her weakness. This content area right here is her weakness. But she's really good. She's, so, but, I was able to get in, but the eyes were on me. And so I think about students now that I'm telling you all this part of my story. I'm thinking about my own students that I teach and I have taught in the past who do have some real good, solid strengths and abilities about themselves. But then you see that weakness, if they don't get a handle on it, it could be their downfall, or it could be the thing that closes the opportunity for them if they don't get the right support in that area. And one thing I do like about teaching nowadays, I know we overtest students. I know a lot of people feel that we overtest, and we do a lot of testing, but that data collection, if it's done correctly, it really can provide you a picture of students' development. Just like when you have a baby, your baby is going to the doctor every month or however so frequently so that baby's development can be assessed and charted. And then they will tell you your child is in the 90 percentile developmental range for children his age. And so in middle school, we do have to maybe, don't overtest kids, but it is good to get a picture of their academic growth with good prescribed instruction. And I don't recall getting that back in the day. I recall when I moved to the middle school, one of my science teacher, Mr. Wallace, rest in peace, Mr. Wallace. He was a good man. I mean, from what as a student, I say he was a good man because he taught us how to make soap out of lye and these ingredients. We made soap, perfume, we made deodorant. We did all kinds of stuff. He taught us how to develop pictures, all kinds of stuff in his science class. And Mr. Wallace picked some of us students to take an IQ test, and I was one of them. And then he told me, your IQ is way, he told me some things, and I'm sure he told my parents, and then I'm sure he was one of the teachers in my corner when I was referred and recommended to the high school that I attended and graduated from. But had he not seen something, had he not probably conferred with all of my academic teachers, and this is one reason why I love teaching on a team, because we confer about our students. We talk about how they're doing, if they're struggling, if they're doing well, and having that conference time allows you to really support students where they need you. Middle schools need that time for teachers to have team meetings and time to discuss their peers, their students, and the students in their peer groups and the students as individual learners. So anyway, Mr. Wallace had me and some kids to take this IQ test. And those of us, we went to, that selected group went to the high school that I graduated from. And so I don't know if they did it because we had shown an interest in that high school. We weren't informed, but yeah. So anyway, middle school, the structure and the framework of middle school, I think, is so important. And even if it is in an elementary setting, special care needs to be given to the middle school grades. The middle school learners have special needs, just like you have special needs students who have special needs, whatever their special needs are. Middle school learners have special, specific needs. Their bodies are growing so fast, many of them can't even fit in the desk, and flexible seating is sensible just because of that. You have students who are larger than the teacher, taller than the teacher, wider than the teacher, and sitting in a student desk is too uncomfortable for them. They can't learn sitting in a student desk. So flexible seating is an answer to the growing bodies of middle school students, and flexible seating is an answer to the developmental needs of little students. But middle school students need to be able to stand, have a standing desk to learn, a bouncy ball maybe to sit on. I mean, I don't have a bouncy ball for students to sit on, but I have a book nook where they can sit and read and stretch their legs, sit on a pillow, on a rug. I have other seatings, tables, round tables, trapezoid tables, and individual tables, and all of these things, desks, partner, triads, individuals. And, it would be nice if I could have a standing desk where students could stand and do their work. And then if they need to sit, then there's a chair provided, maybe a stool. And so these are all the things that middle school students, they need the special care that the little kids get. But sometimes, the bigger kids are just kind of, sometimes they act like they don't need special care. They don't need their parents, or they don't need anybody's help, but they do. They do. And 7th grade have needs that 8th graders don't have, and 8th graders have needs that 7th graders don't have. They have their own specific age group developmental needs. And 8th graders need a higher level of rigor. 7th graders need age-appropriate and grade-appropriate rigor. But comparing the two, 8th graders need that higher engagement, relevance, and rigor. And they need more leadership. They both do, 7th and 8th. But they have different ways of those needs being expressed and being met. So I enjoy teaching middle school. When I talk about middle school, someone called it passion. That's not my word. I mean, it may come across as passion, and maybe it is passion, but that's not the word I use to describe it. I just say I was made to, it's a good fit. I fit with middle school. My personality, my idiosyncrasies, how I'll break out singing and dancing, and I'm doing all kinds of stuff. And the kids they just laugh. I'm just eccentric. I have my own eccentricities, or if that's a word, that the kids can relate to, that make me human in their eyes. And I just really love teaching middle school. So this is a 35-minute video, you all. So I'm just encouraging you all to reflect on your practice, reflect on why you teach the age group that you teach, what called you there, what pulled you there, and how is it helping you to identify your strengths and weaknesses so that you can be a stronger individual, a healed whole person. I'm not there yet. You know, I had an experience very recently that really showed me like, you know, you know, and so, and I think talking to my brother this morning also uh, really called me to think about some things in a good way too. You know, thank God for family. Thank goodness for family. People who really know like your foundation and you feel safe with them. You feel safe, like they can they care about you and you can talk to them and not worry about anything that you say and getting thrown back at you or being abused and your trust being mishandled and stuff. So yeah, guys, I love teaching. So I'm just a nerd because I'm always, and I'm not a true nerd. I'm a nerd because I'm a teacher. I have been made into a nerd because of what I do requires me to do nerdy things. And I don't care because I like what I do. So I don't care if I'm doing nerdy things. So all right, you all. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Please watch the entire video. Listen to me on 1.5 speed so that way you can enjoy the whole video in a shorter amount of time. Thumbs up. Be blessed. Bye.